Hi, I'm Judy Lieb, and I'm on the advisory board of the Donner Summit Historical Society. And we are finally getting a chance to videotape and get some of Norm's memories about Donner Summit and skiing and his life up here. And we've been trying to do this for a long time. So we're ready to get going with interviewing Norm Sayler. So Norm, tell us a little about yourself, where you were born.
First of all, Judy, thank you for the opportunity, and it's wonderful to be working with you. How did I get into this? Well, I was born in Sacramento in December 31, 1933, at Sutter Hospital, and right next to it was the old PG&E car barn. I was lucky as a kid, as I grew up, to still see some of the horses that drug the trolley cars on the streetcar tracks in Sacramento. How did I get into skiing? Well, our church, which was St. Luke's Lutheran Church on the corner of Alhambra Boulevard and Broadway, uh, we started putting together ski trips. And so I got to go on those, but I was not a skier. I was a tobogganer. And we would come up to Emigrant Gap, but one of the main places was here in Soda Springs, out on the old Van Norden Dam. And in those days, there was hundreds of tobogganers. And so we'd get out there and just have a lot of fun. And I made a number of those kind of trips to Donner Summit. We went to Peddler's Hill. We went to various places. And then one day here in Soda Springs, our choir leader, her name was Hetty, she said, "Norman, you should try skiing." I says, "No, I'm a tobogganer." Well, anyway, she let me use her skis and boots. And I went over and there was that thing called a rope tow. And I watched people, they'd grab it and up the hill they would go. So I walked over there, didn't have a ticket or anything. I just did it. Nobody paid attention to me. I grabbed that thing and up the hill I went and I came down. I was then a skier. So that's how I really got into it. And living in Sacramento and going to high school, graduated in 1952 from McClatchy High School. And our group would come up. I helped start the Tioga Ski Club and a number of things in Sacramento. And then finally in 1954, I decided to move to the mountains. Mainly because the work situation was wonderful down there. But when winter came along, the type of work I was doing, I was a laborer, just digging ditches at that time. And I decided to move to the mountains, and so I moved up here, and here I am today.
Well, what happened when you moved up here? What'd you do when you first got here?
Well, that was kind of a fun thing. I was very, very lucky in that when I got here, just before you cross the bridge going out to Serene Lakes was a little shack, and it was the feed shack in the summertime that they used to feed the horses that Dennis Jones, Star Walton, and those people would have their horses up here in the summer. And it was great because it had a light bulb and a place where I could throw my sleeping bag out, and that was really kind of nice. But that's all it had. No water, no heat, no nothing. But you know what? It was perfect for me because across the street was Helen Hogle, who ran the little coffee shop for the Soda Springs Ski Hill. And I lucked out with her. I cleaned the toilets and mopped the floors in the evening and emptied the garbage. And she would give me a lunch sent out to the ski hill, which is where I was working. And so that was good there. And then I went up to Soda Springs Hotel with Brant and Doris Chaplin, who were running the hotel at that time. And I got a job with them, washing dishes, cleaning toilets, mopping the floors. And that got me a breakfast and a dinner and a place to take a shower. So I died and gone to heaven.
Didn't you go into the army?
No, I moved up here again in 54. And just a side note there, when I got here, Serene Lakes, there were 7 houses at Serene Lakes. That's all there was. Soda Springs was a thriving town. The town of Norden had 200 railroad workers there. Up at Donner Ski Ranch across the street in the Tunnel 6 area there were 2 dormitories, a cook shack, and there were 50 guys living up there. So we had a really big community. But the idea of getting here and getting involved in all of that stuff, I started to work out at the Soda Springs Ski Hill for Milt Hogle, and I was just a ski lift operator out there. But that was great. And then it went along, and I'd heard that Donner Ski Ranch had been bought by a group of people in Sacramento that included Harry Lev and his wife Sylvia and their daughter Carol. And Carol happened to be a very good friend of mine, and she said, my mom and dad bought into Donner Ski Ranch and they're going to build a chairlift there. Would you want to work there? Well, most certainly, I said that I would like to do that. Well, anyway, I went to work at Donner Ski Ranch, and then finally decided to come back to Soda Springs. And all this time before I got up here, I was in the National Guard. I happened to be a Sergeant First Class in the National Guard, but I was going to have to go to another 17 or 18 years of that kind of stuff to, so to speak, in those days people did it, but to beat going in the Army. And with the help of a couple of people, Gordy Butterfield, Dick Buick, I got some letters from some senators and stuff, and I was going to be drafted and go into the mountain troops. And luckily enough, God forbid, the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, I went to Fort Ord, California, got down there, got inducted. They put me on a DC-3 airplane, flew me to Stapleton Airport in Denver, Colorado, got on a bus, went over to Fort Carson, Colorado. The bus stopped. I got out of the bus and I looked across the street, and here was an outfit called Mountain and Cold Weather Training Command, which is where I was hoping I was going to go to in time. And gosh forbid, Buddy Werner, Marv Melville, Bobby Kolak, Mike Mullen, all these kids that I knew from ski racing, there they were. They took me into Colonel Woolley and said, we got to get this guy. He's a skier from California. So that's how it really got started for me.
So what did you do when you were in the Army?
Well, again, you had to go through the stuff that you had to do. I had to go to basic training, and I went through the first 8 weeks of basic training and got done with it. And then they wanted me to go to a second week, 8 weeks of basic training. I decided I didn't want to do that. So lo and behold, in my water ski days, I happened to have a bad knee, supposedly. I have to white lie about that. And I had a 3C profile. Well, that allowed me to be able to get out of marching and some of that kind of stuff, acting like a real soldier, because I just said, well, I want to get in the mountain troops. So because in high school I'd learned how to run a typewriter, and I could type about 70 words a minute. And with that, I got a job in one of the offices there doing classification and assignment. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. The just come an opening for a truck driver at Camp Hale, Colorado. Well, I stuck my name in there. 2 days later, there I was up at Camp Hale with all my Army buddies, skier friends, so on and so forth.
Tell us a little bit about Camp Hale, was it called?
Yes, Camp Hale, Colorado was the place of the 10th Mountain Division in World War II. But locally, we had around 30 young people that went in the mountain troops. Carl Kielhofer from Truckee. Bud Zoritz, the building we're sitting in, was a Zoritz ski shop. He was in the 10th Mountain Division. Bill Briner of the Tahoe hotel fame over in Tahoe City. Ed Viero here in town. Bill Klein. All of these guys went into the mountain troops. And Loogie Foger, it just goes on and on. So with my getting into there, those names became quite prominent to me. And while I was there, I got to do a lot of good things. I ski raced. We skied at Aspen, was our first place the first winter in 1958, when Aspen still only had 2 single chairlifts. That's all that was there. And in 1957, and then in 58, they built a double chairlift. Anyway, with the Army, that was the best thing that ever happened to me in my lifetime, because I got to be, I think, pretty close friends with people like Buddy Werner, Marv Melville, Les Streeter, gosh, just a whole bunch of those guys. Mike Mullen, of course, Bobby Kolak and I were good friends. Bobby was from Roseville, California, but being in and it was called Mountain and Cold Weather Training Command, and it had, not because of me, but it had the highest ranking of credentials for college kids and everything in the United States. It was if you were in there, you were really somebody, and everybody wanted to be in the mountain troop because all the kids that were Olympic skiers, cross country, jumping wise, all of them were in that outfit. And it closed down in the spring of 1958, and Camp Hale was the big place. And they were the boys, as I said, from the 10th Mountain Division. And they were the ones that opened up the Italian front and beat the Germans in the monastery and the Po Valley and all that kind of stuff. So it was a very, very important group of guys. And when they got out of the Army, these are the people that went out and all they wanted to do was to have a ski area, a ski resort. And they started building them, all of them with just nickels and dimes and friends and all that. And that's how most of these ski areas got themselves going, was because of the boys in the 10th Mountain Division.
So you were in Soda Springs and then into the Army, and then you came back from the Army. What did you do?
Came back in the spring of 1958 when we walked off the post there at Camp Hale, Colorado. There was 18 of us, and we were the last 18 soldiers that were stationed at Camp Hale. Donner Ski Ranch had their chairlift built, and it got running in 1955. And when I got back, my good friend Carol Lev and her mom and dad said they'd had 2 or 3 managers at Donner Ski Ranch. And fortunately enough, my second year in the Army, I married my wife Karen Sayler, and they asked us if we would want to run Donner Ski Ranch, and I said, well, I guess so. We've never done it before, but we could probably do that. And we got a great job. They offered us $300 a month and a place to live. Of course, they didn't tell me that they didn't have the $300 a month to pay us. So the two of us did whatever we could do to make money and get Donner Ski Ranch going. And one of the first things I did was I told all of my friends that Karen and I are running Donner Ski Ranch and we need help. And people came out of the woodwork, guys that wanted to be ski lift operators and ski instructors and bartenders and cooks and just everything. And that's how Donner Ski Ranch got going in the modern area of 1958 is when we started. And of course, we were there for 46 years.
What happened to the original owners? Did you buy it from them, or?
Well, that was the thing. The owners were people like, especially in Sacramento, there was, as I said before, Harry Lev, Dr. Norman Gary, Dr. Blumenfeld, Harry Tonkin and Miller Tonkin, 7-Up Bottling Company, Joe Schwab that had the fabric centers. They were, and a gentleman named George Teagle, very important George Teagle was. But anyway, Carol's mom and dad said, God, we can get you there at Donner Ski Ranch. So we took over, and another guy that was there was Byron Nishkin, was part of Donner Ski Ranch at that time. And after a couple of years, Byron came to Karen and I and said, would you like to buy our stock in Donner Ski Ranch? And I said, I don't have any money. I can't afford to buy anything. And he says, don't worry about it. Pay me when you can. And he handed me his 500 shares of stock, and that's how Karen and I became involved in Donner Ski Ranch. And we went through a lot of trials and tribulations. Without Karen, personally, Donner Ski Ranch would not exist as it does today, because she was the one behind everything. I was just a tractor driver.
Do you have any stories that are kind of fun from your time at Donner Ski Ranch?
I guess one of the biggest things about Donner Ski Ranch was that a lot of people don't realize it, but it was at the start of when double chairlift started to move along. People keep thinking Sugar Bowl was first. Sugar Bowl wasn't first. It was after Soda Springs. It was after Rainbow Tavern. It was after Cisco Grove, because they didn't get going until 39 and all of those places. Even Donner Ski Ranch, without that name, got its start in the 30s. But a story about the double chairlift there. That chair was built and designed by United Tramways out of San Francisco, and there was only 3 of those chairs made. The first one went to Tommy Tyndall in Big Bear, California, and that was done in 1954. And then in 1955, Donner Ski Ranch and Mammoth Mountain both bought double chairlifts from United Tramways, and they got them being built, and both of them opened in December of 1955. And There was only 3 of those lifts built. A couple of the chairs are still around, but a fun story with that, I got a phone call one day from Gary McCoy, uh, Dave McCoy's son, and said, we're cleaning out our junkyard down there. Norm, come down. Anything we've got that's in that yard you can have. Well, I went down there and there happened to be a bunch of the old chairs off of their chairlift number 1. This was probably 20 years ago. Anyway, I got a phone call from Dave McCoy, and Dave asked me, Norm, do you have one of the old chairs from your chair 1? And I says, Dave, I happen to have 10 or 12 of your chairs. And he couldn't believe that. So he says, God, we'd love to have one. Well, here in town, Don Belden was gathering up those kind of chairs and refurbish them, making them good. And I called Donnie and I said, Don, I need one of those chairs for Dave McCoy. Well, he put it together and then called me and said he had it. And I called Dave and said, Dave, I've got your chair. I'll bring it down. No, you won't bring it down to me. Roma and I are getting in the truck and we're driving up there and we're going to come get it right now. And that chair sits in the museum down there at Dave McCoy in Mammoth Mountain. So just a lot of little stories like that went on. I was a guy that went out. We had no money at Donner Ski Ranch. No, just didn't have it. And so luckily enough, I knew a lot of people in the ski industry, and we were able to either buy chairlift parts or scrounge them or had them given to us from Alpine, from Squaw, from all over the place. We bought one chair from Vail, Colorado, the backside of Vail, number 5, and we made that into 2 chairs. But that, those are just fun things to do, but without the help of a whole bunch of people that all became part of Donner Ski Ranch. A fun story there is I might be riding the chairlift and I'd be talking to the person beside me and who are you and what do you do, and one day a name that comes up is John Halliwell, a very prominent person out at Serene Lakes, and we were riding the chairlift together and he asked me who I was. I asked him who he was, and by the time we got to the top of the chair, I told him that he could invest $3,000, and luckily enough, if he did that, he could help me clean toilets and cook and park cars and do all kinds of fun things and be a part owner of Donner Ski Ranch. And so a tremendous amount of people, the Lowe's families, the Knutsons, all people of Donner Summit that we put them together at Donner Ski Ranch. It was just a great place. A lot of people wanted to be involved in it, and they were.
Well, what other stories do you have about your skiing time here in the Summit area? Because you were at Soda Springs and you worked the lift, as you said. Did you do any other kinds of jobs there? And how did you pay your rent before you went into the Army when you were there?
Well, again, before I went in the Army, I didn't have to pay rent because I didn't have a place that was good enough to pay rent for. But I survived. Like we stayed in a place called the Polish Cabin, which was behind the Oakland Ski Club. That was a place that I lived. I lived in the Buick house that the Buick family, Dick Buick's mom and dad, Carl and Pickle and Jeannie, the daughter, they built that place and lived there. But in those days when we got together with people, it was I think quite different than today. Everybody pitched in. You didn't get into a house and not be part of it. And you made sure in those days, number one, you made sure you went to work. Not like today to where kids, I might be sick today, so I maybe better not show up, or I got a friend who's getting sick, so I'm not going to go to work. Not in our days. In those days, you had to really do a lot of good things, and you had to make sure your dollars went everywhere. I lived in a place up the street here, Roy Thompson's house, that there was a little trailer in there. And a guy that I lived with told me one weekend he was going to go to Palo Alto to go to this frat party. And so he went down there and he came back, and he happened to be a ski patrolman and a photographer out at the Soda Springs Ski Hill. And when he got back, I says, how was the party? He said, it was great. And he says, look at what I've got. And he pulled out a napkin, and on the napkin it says, I am now your manager. I get 50% of everything you guys ever make. And it was signed by the Kingston Trio. And here lately, I did buy a photograph of this guy, and unfortunately enough, he got bad into drugs. He owned the Orpheum Theater in San Francisco, went to prison, so on and so forth. But that was kind of a fun story.
Yeah.
It could go on and on. One of the big stories that a lot of people like to hear that I tell all the time. We're sitting right here in my little old barber chair, and I'm looking up at a hat. It's a Stetson hat. And one day here in town, a couple came in. Their names were Bill and Dorothy Ryan. And they came to town, and he walked into the bar and he says, "I'm buying wall to wall." He had this accent from supposedly Wyoming. And I just sold my big cattle ranch in Wyoming, and I made lots of money and everything, and I'm here in Soda Springs. And downstairs in the Soda Springs Hotel, he put some of his stuff, some saddles and some guns and some other things that he stored there. And he lived across the street in the Rutherford house. And one day I was walking around the corner right here at the Zorid ski shop, and a car came from the right and another car came from the left, and I looked, and it was snowing pretty good, and down the little bank was Bill Ryan walking down there, and he climbed off the bank. These two cars stopped, and out jumped six guys with guns pointed at him, and his hands went up in the air, and I couldn't figure what was going on, so I had to go over there and check it out. And the FBI guy said, "Son, this is none of your business." And Bill Ryan says, "Well, wait a minute, though. Norm's my buddy, and I want him to have my hat." And there hangs that Stetson hat. Who was Bill Ryan? Well, Bill and Dorothy Ryan were bank embezzlers from North Carolina. They'd embezzled $500,000 thereabouts. The odd thing is, they're wanted posters. One of them was in the Norden post office, and the other one was across the street here where the little ski shop is today in the back room, because that's where the post office was. So their wanted posters were both here in town. How did they get caught? Well, Bill, unfortunately enough, went to Reno one time, was gambling, and he liked to play dice, and he threw the dice down the deal, but out of his pocket fell a .38 pistol, and they tracked him down and got him. But that's the hat right there.
What about, the Soda Springs Hotel? You keep talking about that. It's now the condos here. But what was that like when you lived in the 50s when you were here?
Well, when I got here, I wasn't quite 21, but I guess I must have looked okay, because old Doc Rockholm, who happened to be the deputy sheriff, he wasn't a deputy sheriff, but he had a badge that said he was sheriff, and they checked your ID when you walked in. Well, I happened to know him pretty good, so I kept getting in. But in those days, I'll tell you what, come Friday night, we would look forward to that, those of us that were living up here, because up the hill would come all these college kids, and especially these wonderful college girls. And we would chase the girls all the time. But in those days, they would start showing up around 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night after their long drive. And we'd throw quarters in the jukebox, and we would dance and party until 2 o'clock every Friday night. And then come Saturday night, we'd get out there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd start drinking beer, and we'd dance again until 2 o'clock in the morning. Most of us couldn't wait till Sunday night got here so we could rest, because we just never stopped. We worked, we skied, we partied, we just had great times.
And the train used to stop here at the hotel, correct?
Well, that goes way back into the 30s when the train stopped here. The train would bring people up, and that was the first people that really started using the train were Sierra Clubbers. They started coming, and the train would let them off here at Soda, and then they would walk from here at Soda, they would walk all the way to the Norden station and then up to the Sierra Club. But we got to go back just a little bit. You ask about the Soda Springs Hotel, because the Soda Springs Hotel with the Jones people, and that was Oscar Jones and his wife, they were the ones that had the foresight to see that Highway 40 was going to get built, and it was going to require that we had service stations, grocery stores, hotels, bars, restaurants, for all these tourists in these automobiles to come by. And that is how the Soda Springs Hotel got its real start in 1926. And that was Oscar Jones. His brother was Herschel Jones, who was another prominent player here on Donner Summit. Herschel was the man that ended up owning Rainbow for a time, and he's the one that added on to Rainbow after it had its first start with a smaller building, which if you look at photographs, you can tell where that is. But Herschel also was involved in some other things. He was the man that built Nyack Lodge, which today is the overlook at Immigrant Gap looking down on Bear Valley. But another thing that he did, he helped Bud and Madeline Walton developed the modern era of the Donner Ski Ranch, and he was the one with the money behind it. But it was Bud and Madeline and their daughter Star Walton, who many of you people know, and was on our 1964 Olympic team, and still probably one of our most prominent people in our little town of Soda Springs. In fact, I think right now she's been here longer than I have, which puts the two of us the oldest people, I guess, in town. But anyway, they started Donner Ski Ranch and built a Constam T-bar there, and that was done in 1946. And then they ended up selling it to the people from to a guy named Jack Woodard. Then it went on from there. But backwards again, the highway, Lake Van Norden, that was all part of our community. The Yuba River, which those have all disappeared. It is the town has disappeared. We had 5 bars, 5 hotels, 5 restaurants, 5 or 6 service stations, two grocery stores, 2 post office. We had a real community.
You left Donner Ski Ranch, or what happened? You know, you were running it. Then what was the next step?
Well, Donner Ski Ranch was when I got there. A thing to say is that skiing in those days was a way of life. We did it because we just loved it. The people that, even Alex Cushing that really, and Wayne Polson that started Squaw Valley, those guys loved that way of life. It has changed now. Now I say it used to be a way of life. Now it's just a day of entertainment, high cost entertainment. So my 46 years at Donner Ski Ranch with my wife, she ran the place. She was the one that took care of everything. And God, in those days when we first got there, we had to really work pretty hard. Karen would come over there after she was always stay to the lodge and close it down at 2:00 in the morning, close the bar, make sure the pennies were counted and all that kind of stuff. And she'd come home, crawl in one side of the bed, and I'd crawl out the other side to get the parking lots open, to make sure the lift was running, to make sure the cook showed up and all that kind of stuff. And you had to do that in those days because that's the way it was. If you wanted the place to stay open, you had to stay with it. So I went through all my years there and ended up being a, so to speak, contractor. I said earlier that Serene Lakes had 7 houses. Now there's 850 homes out there. And I have to say that I helped to build 450 of them by taking the trees down, digging the foundation, help put the water and sewer and stuff in. So I watched that whole community grow. As that one grew, I watched our community out here kind of go backwards.
When did you leave Donner Ski Ranch?
Oh, I left Donner Ski Ranch. It's been, 10 years ago at least. Being quite frank, it got ourselves into financial trouble because of a manager that I hired, and it went down in bankruptcy, but I'm not complaining. I'm happy. I've had a great life. My wife and I didn't live together for a long time. We were still friends until when she passed away a few years ago. But it was a great way of life. Now I finally here recently moved to Soda Springs and have a little apartment, and I'm totally happy. I still like to work. I wish I could work harder than I'm capable of today. But anyway, it's still fun.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you, Norm. This is a great story of your life so far, and we'll talk about some other things in another time.
Well, I hope so. It's been fun. Makes me think.
Thank you.